Okay, quick update about the community, the code of conduct. So all sessions are recorded and will be published on the YouTube. So if you don't like to be recorded, I will kindly ask you to leave the meeting. Please put your mic for all the attendees to off and just turn it on when you want to speak. Otherwise, it's better to put it off. For the rest of the code of conduct, please review the page on GitHub. And what is Cloud DevOps Vision for people or new joiners and people that they don't know about Cloud DevOps Vision? So Cloud DevOps Vision is a community believes in open source initiatives and empowered by Microsoft MVP and Microsoft Regional Directors members. And we provide similar services or several activities like live sessions, mentoring people, open source projects, study groups, and job recommendation as well. It is co-founded or founded by 3 MVPs and 1 regional directors in 3 continents. And before asking question, people usually reach out. I would kindly ask you to review the prerequisites, either the code of conduct or the FAQ, also the YouTube channel and the GitHub. You will find most of the, your question or answer for your question there. Your support is really appreciated and needed. So we can have several links for either the website, which is redirect to the GitHub or the Facebook page, so you can follow us for many places. To just remind you about Easy App, it's just a small application developed using several technologies, so we can implement the DevOps in several activities. And it's all about using this app to cover the end-to-end process for the DevOps. So if you don't know that, please visit GitHub and take a look about Easy App. Just for number, to just give you, we now reached around 1,100 members, more than that even, and from more than 40 countries, and we're still growing. And this is why I really believe that we should take this opportunity for more communication, to have a community where we can have several activities like COP or COE or open source. We can use this community. And this is why I prefer to keep connected in our channels like GitHub, or ask a question. You can raise question on GitHub, or filling the survey is very important. We also have exam vouchers for some activities. I'm still in the process of getting some Azure subscription. I don't have yet, but I'm working on that. There is some new coming session in October, November. I think maybe this will be in November. And there is also another one for Azure Data Factory and CI/CD. Yes, your support is really appreciated. Okay, Tarun, the stage is yours. And so,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that was a great introduction, Mohammed.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me here. As you can appreciate, I didn't bring any slides across. I thought I could talk to the community about the topic of mastering time management. And Mohammed, you had collected some questions that the community had sent your way, so I'll happily answer them as they come along. I don't want this to be a presentation to the audience. I want this to be an interactive session. So if you think while I talk there are questions you want to ask which would add value, then please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself, and I'm more than happy to take questions as I go along.
Thank you.
I'll start off by introducing myself. My name is Tarun Arora. I am the Regional Head of DevOps and Software Engineering for Avanade in UK and Ireland. In this role, I look after all of our software engineering and DevOps skilled people across the region. In addition to this, I am also a Microsoft MVP in DevOps. I have been an MVP for about 8 years running now. When I joined the MVP pool, the product back in the day was known as TFS, Team Foundation Server. It had just moved out of the VS ALM mold that it was in. And it was a very interesting time because for the first time, it felt like an end-to-end product that delivered everything that you needed to do to successfully deliver a project. But if I look back 8 years, Microsoft has reinvented themselves. They've reinvented the DevOps platform. They've moved away from being a boxed product to being a real live service that's evergreen and ever evolving online. And you go onto the browser today and you type dev.azure.com and you come back to it in 3 weeks' time, you're going to see a whole new UI, a whole new feature set. And that's the pace that they're evolving with. And I just cannot comprehend how successful this product has become. Now, some of this has to be attributed back to the community. Some of this has to be attributed back to the MVPs that have been working day in, day out with the product team and with the customers to bridge that gap and make the product even more relevant. And I'm so proud to be part of that community, well knitted within the product group function to help them evolve the product and make it more relevant to the audience. In addition to that, I have authored quite a few topics on DevOps. I've written a few books on TFS and DevOps. I've taken a slightly different approach when writing those books. So rather than writing a 200-page novel that you would read cover to cover, instead I've opted to write recipe cookbooks, as they're called. They are topics that you could read about, and they are sort of knitted together, but in isolation. So if you wanted to today learn how to create a pipeline for infrastructure as code, or how to create a pipeline for Azure Dev Test Labs, then these are individual recipes within the chapters that you can read through and understand how you could implement a certain functionality to solve a certain use case by using the product. The authors have reached back to write another update on the book, and therefore I do think that the book has seen its relevance in the market, and that's why the opportunity to rewrite new versions of the book keeps coming up. So, if you haven't, I would encourage you to go and check out the book on Amazon. It's called Azure DevOps Server 2019, and you'll find other links to the other versions as well. In addition to that, I am quite active in the community. Like Mohammed, I run a YouTube channel as well. It's called Azure DevOps TV. And it's not as big as Mohammed's channel, but it's growing. and I would appreciate the same love and support from you. And please do go check out the channel in your free time. And if you see value, I would love a follow on the channel as well. So enough about me and enough about what I do. Let's jump right into the topic of mastering time management. So one thing that I get asked quite a lot is that how do I manage my time? And it's one word answer I could give you, or I could dwell on it and talk for a few minutes over. Let's start with the one word answer. How do I manage my time? I manage my time effectively. And that within itself has so many elements to make it effective. And the one principle that I will start with for anyone who's seeking advice on how to manage their time effectively is to think about the 4D mantra. The 4D mantra stands for delete, delay, diminish, and delegate, right? And all the 4Ds are important. Now, the reason the first D is important is delete is because, through the day, you will receive hundreds of interruptions, hundreds of emails, hundreds of notifications on Facebook, GitHub, Instagram, Snapchat, and this chat and that chat, WhatsApp, right? Like the world of communication has broadened beyond what you and I remembered back in the day when we were still young, right? And with so many modes of interruption coming your way, sometimes the best way to be effective with your time management is to say, this does not apply to me, I'm going to delete this, right? And the moment you start doing that, you start to free up a lot of time for yourself to focus on things that matter. And that's why deletion of unnecessary annoyances, distractions is probably the first step to effective time management. The next step from there is delay. Sometimes you have to question where in the sequence of things of importance does the thing you're doing right now matter, and where in that priority list does it stack? So for example, your boss or your friend may come to you asking for something immediate, right? And you're like, okay, wait, but I'm doing this. Should I drop this and should I focus on this? Ask yourself, is this really important because someone is saying it's important, or is it important because in the grand scheme of things, it does deliver the value that someone would need right now, and therefore it's worthy of being reprioritized over this other activity that you're performing right now? Let me take a classic example of that, right? Like you're at the moment in the groove, in the ID, cranking away code, writing this new piece of software, this web app that's going to run in the cloud and use all the fancy features that are available within Azure Web Apps. And then suddenly someone comes along and says, hey, can you help me out with this Docker image that I built? It's giving me a 502 error. Now, you could pause right away and go and help them, which may be the right thing to do. But at the same time, you should question whether it's meaningful to come to a logical conclusion on the activity that you're doing before taking this distraction on. And that's where delaying sometimes makes you more effective, where the answer could be, I will come and see to it in 15 minutes while I finish this logically, right? And some of this is basic stuff, but we every day within our busy routines forget to improvise on it. The third and the other important factor within the 4Ds is diminish. And where diminish adds value is sometimes our human nature leads us to perfection, leads us to gold plating. I'm writing this class and I want to make sure all the solid principles apply to it. I want to make sure that it is the best class, the most well-written function with the best naming convention with 100% test coverage. But even if it had 85% test coverage, and it didn't live to the highest standards of code, maybe in the first iteration, that's the right thing to do. And therefore, the diminish here means you have to challenge yourself and ask, where do I draw the line? Where do I say, this is enough, and I've done a good enough job rather than the best job, and move forward to the next activity, rather than spend all your time perfecting something to find that you've missed out on all these other 20 things that also needed to be done. So that's where the diminish comes in. Now, it's not to say, and don't get me wrong, it's not to say that that means we don't do justice to the quality of the work that we're delivering. That is absolutely paramount. We need to do that. We need to make sure we do a good job. But what we shouldn't do is compromise on delivering more because we are so sold on getting everything to the perfectest nature that we will never consider it done till it's perfect. And when the nature becomes that, you will find in the grand scheme of things, you will only end up doing two things which don't add up to the end results. And therefore, the product that you're building towards still becomes ineffective. Whereas if you were able to do these 15 things, the product still becomes effective and you still get time to evolve it as we go along, right? So the minimum viable product, the good enough nature, is the part of the facet for the third D here. The last D in this 4D mantra is very much the delegate. And this, to me, has really been the key to my success. And I couldn't put it more bluntly, but in order to grow yourself within the organization that you work in, or more so within the work that you do, it's absolutely important to learn how to delegate effectively. And why this is important is there's only one of you. There is only one Muhammad or Ahmed or Christian or Nada or whoever else on the call. There's just one of us. It's impossible to clone us. But what is possible is to build trust, build a team, let them share the same objectives and the goals as yourself, and let them be accountable for the outcome. You support them in the journey to success, but let them own that success. Let them take the task on as you would, guide them, mentor them, handhold them, but let them drive it to fruition, because that's where they will become your multiplier. And that means now you're the funnel that is getting more done by delegating and mentoring more people to live up to the standards that you've set. Now, you could take a different approach and say, rather than delegate, I will just become a bit more effective and efficient in doing my work. But what you will find is you will stress yourself out, and over time you'll start to not do a great job at things that you were quite effective with before, because there'll be fatigue, there'll be tiredness, there'll be this constant rush of getting more done. Whereas as you start to delegate more and more, you would find that people feel more attached to you because they're learning from you, they're learning from your experiences as well. So, delegation is a very core part of effective time management. And that's why it's the fourth D in the 4Ds that we just talked about. So I'm going to pause here for a second and see if there are any questions in the audience.
Any question? If anyone has question, please just unmute and ask a question.
I just have a small question here. Hello, this is Ahmed Nasr. Okay.
Hi, Ahmed. Go for it.
Hello. How are you? The thing is, I was just very sorry that I joined later. I just want you just to list in just 10 seconds what are the 4Ds that you're talking about here. That's all I'm asking, and my apologies for joining late.
Okay, no problem. We'll reiterate that. It will just reinforce the message again. The 4D stand for delete, delay, diminish, and delegate, where the first one is delete. It's, shut the noise, what is not relevant, put it to one side. This allows you to focus on the core. Delay, sometimes prioritizing what you do first versus what you do second is important to be able to get something done. And by not being able to prioritize, you end up distressing yourself and stressing yourself and don't get anything done. The third one is diminish, where you sometimes challenge yourself to see what is a good enough job to get the job done versus doing the perfect job at it, because sometimes perfection leads to too much of time drain and therefore you can't meet the objectives that are set for you. However, if you get just good enough done, then it's good for now and you can revisit to improvise on it later. And then the last D is very much the delegate, where I sort of talked about, creating the multipliers of yourself.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Hello,
Any other?
This is
Hi.
Ibrahim.
Hi, Ibrahim. How are you doing?
Great. I was asking about what do you think about writing each day, like timetable, or writing each day what you do every day. Does that help, do you think, or what?
That's a fantastic point, Ibrahim, there, and that's a segue for me to talk about something else that I wanted to talk about. So I'll improvise on your point there. Is, what we usually find is that time that's not tracked is not measured, and things that are not measured can never be improved. For example, I could be sitting in front of a camera the whole day trying to perfect a speech or my pitch for a presentation to a customer. And guess what? At the end of the day, that presentation, the customer may decide to move it by 4 days. And I look back and I would wonder, I spend the whole 8 hours of my day preparing for a presentation that's not even happening today. And the chances are that when it happens in 4 days' time, I would have to spend the 8 hours again, right? And that's such a time drain. So getting into a routine where you write down with broad brushes how you're spending the time allows you to reflect back onto it a few days later to see whether that was a good decision or not. And think of it as a machine learning model where you're really going back and assessing whether your decisions were right or wrong. Now, some decisions may prove to be right and some decisions may prove to be not so right. And that's where you would improvise and say, had I not spent that time of 8 hours and instead spend 4 hours, maybe that would have been good enough. Now, let's lead on to something else, which is emails, right? We spend a lot of time on our emails. Sometimes we're slave to our phone, to our laptop, to our iPad, because the first thing we do, we open the laptop or the phone, is we browse down and look for new emails. Now, instead, and I used to do the same thing a few years back, is, I would constantly check my emails and try and reply to the email within the minute it arrived. And sometimes some emails deserve that kind of a treatment where they're really urgent and they need it to be responded to right away. But some emails don't deserve that. And yet we do it because we can, prioritizing responding to an email over doing another activity which has more outcomes attached to it. And so I have basically decided that I'm not going to check my emails throughout the day. I check my emails at 9 a.m., at 1 p.m., and then at 5 p.m. And then any logical breaks I take within these time slots is when I will go and have a quick glance at my emails to only respond to urgent emails which are marked with a flag where I am in the to list and not in the CC list. So you see, what I've done is I have decided consciously by looking back at my habits of how I spend my time to work out how I can be more effective by defining for myself a strategy of using my time and dedicated it to emails in a way that I can, keep the requester happy, but at the same time, leaving me enough time to invest it in other activities that I find sufficient. And don't get me wrong here, I respond to, 200 plus emails every day. I get in excess of 400, 450 emails. Now, a lot of those emails are very much read and don't action, but many of those emails do deserve a response back, and I do it. But I cannot deal with that volume of emails if all I do the whole day is just keep looking at my inbox and respond. You have to take the hard line and say, what is worth delaying versus what is worth deleting. And when you can get into that mode of being sort of being able to rationalize and structure around that, you'll find yourself to be more effective. So Ibrahim, I hope that answers your question to some extent.
Yes, of course, that helped me a lot. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Happy to take one more question before moving on.
Well, another question I was asking about is time management applicable only at work or in life in general?
That's a brilliant question, and I think time management applies everywhere, because time management applies a lot to work, because the definition of work has changed over the number of years that we've been accustomed to work, where work was very much going into an office, logging in, having a project plan, knowing the activities you were performing. That has transpired into such an agile way of working, where we end up creating work for ourselves, whether we're at work or not. And we find that even after the physical hours of being in the office, we're still working. Now multiply with the times of COVID, where there's such a where there's such a fine line between working from home, working at home, working forever, not working, sleeping, because you're logically at home the whole time. It kind of feels all right to log in and do some work even after office hours, right? So just trying to reiterate that the definition of work has evolved there. So while time management is absolutely critical at work and work-centric organizations, it's even more important outside of work, because the same principles still apply. There's still one of you, Ibrahim, and there's still one of me, right? And with us are attached our families, our social responsibilities, our own personal growth, right? I would love to learn Spanish. I would love to learn to play guitar. I would love to play baseball, and I would love to go for a swim. But in the 2 hours of the daylight I have left after work, there's only so much I can squeeze in. So I still need to decide what I would like to prioritize for myself, and what can I co-do with my family that I can prioritize both of us for. And so if you are not effective at managing your time outside of work, you will find that you will get more stressed during your hours of work, because you will find that you're not able to satisfy yourselves and your wishes outside of work. So I guess to be able to strike a perfect balance, you need to ensure that you feel satisfied. And the best way to do that is to leverage time management skills both when you're at work and you're outside of work.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Okay. So I think, time management isn't a new concept. It's been there for ages. And, it goes back to Mark Twain's time. And in his famous words, he said, if your job is to eat a frog, then make sure you eat the frog first thing in the morning. And if your job is to eat 2 frogs, make sure you eat the ugliest and the biggest frog first. Now, I don't eat a frog, and I don't think you do as well. But the message here is that the frog is compared to the big and ugly work that we have to do within our life every day. It might be putting the trash out. It may be, fixing that bug. It may be giving that certification, and it could be something else. We all have our own unique challenges and our own unique snowflakes. And everyone can define a personal challenge for themselves. But the point here is, don't procrastinate. You will find that if you sit on something and can't make a decision, then the chances are you will stress yourself because you're unable to decide. You'll keep mulling over that topic in the back of your mind, utilizing the 20-30% CPU that, for example, Chrome running in your browser right now will keep doing on your PC no matter whether you use it or not. And whether you appreciate it or not, it still drains the CPU on your machine and it still makes it ineffective. So, don't keep things embedded at the back of your mind forever. The earlier you can take a decision on them, the more and the free your brain will be, and the more it can process the other 10,000 things that it needs to do, right? So decision making and being more proactive is key here. And being able to take the challenges that you need to deliver to within the day up and early, first thing in the morning when your mind is still fresh, is the right thing to do. And what you will find is as you crack that email that you had to write, which was important, and you got it done and dusted out of the way the first thing, or that important design document that you had to write and you got it done and dusted the first thing in the morning, is you're going to feel such an energy within yourself. You're going to feel so confident and empowered that if you could do this yourself within the managed time that you let for yourself, then there's so much more you can do within the day for yourself, and there's nothing literally that can stop you. I've had mornings where I've been able to clear the 2, 3, 4 things that have been like the key highlight of my day within the first 2 hours of being on work. And I find that the energy just keeps me going and going and going to do a lot more. So my message here again is, in the famous words of Mark Twain, if you have to eat the frog, then make sure you eat it and get it done with the first thing in the morning. So I want to take a pulse here to see whether people are still finding this relevant. If, I am still hopefully giving you something to take away. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take the questions as they come along.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hello. I'm Nada. So I have a question, please. How to manage the interruptions during the day? So, for example, you are working with a team, and at the same time, your colleagues will call you. They will ask you. After this, your manager will call you. So, how to manage that, please? And thanks.
Nada, that's a fantastic question, and that's a challenge we all face at some point within our life. And sometimes when we're in busy teams or we're in teams with a lot of people that are either our friends, it's hard to draw a line. When we are in a team with some people that are new to an organization, it's hard to draw a line because you want to help them. So, we all within our careers would come across situations where we will find our time is being challenged because we have just too many interruptions coming our way. Now, this is a good example to talk about the Pomodoro technique. And the Pomodoro technique is, again, one that's quite popular, and you can read about it online, but I'll give you the gist of it. The Pomodoro technique says you can get more done in 25 minutes without interruption than you would in 3 hours with interruption, right? So I'll let that sink. If you dedicated 25 minutes of uninterrupted time at one activity, the chances are you'll get it done. But if you try to do the same thing with many interruptions to deal with over 3 hours, you may still struggle. And let's take an example, right? We've got multi-monitors. We've got our phone. We're sitting here writing code. Suddenly an email pops up. We look at it. Suddenly an alert in Team pops up. We look at it. And then a WhatsApp alert comes up on the phone. We look at it. And then we look back at the screen. And then we wait for 2 seconds to think, okay, my debugger was here. What was the last quick stack value? Okay, let me continue, right? So you've broken that rhythm. You have to come back to the context again, and you need to rethink yourself. Multitasking kills your brain cells, right? So the more you start to multitask, the difficult it gets. And this multitasking scenario is our own created problem where, we constantly keep running our Outlook in on our machine. We constantly keep running Teams in, available mode. We constantly keep running our phone in available mode. And if you could take a hard decision when you wanted to focus on something to change the status of your Teams to do not disturb or your Zoom to do not disturb, if you set your phone to DND and you switch off your Outlook, you will find in that 25 minutes, not only will you be able to crank that code, but perfect it as well, right? And so my message here is the controls are within your hand. Now, when you're professionally in the office, sometimes I find that just buying a paper sign or printing a paper sign which says, do not disturb, and putting it by your desk when you are focused on an activity, people will look at it and they will stand back, right? And you will find that over time it becomes a habit. And then when you're done with it, move that sign, because now they know they can come to you, right? But if you leave that sign as a postage for the 8 hours you're within the office, then they'll stop to respect it. But if you make that as a sign that stays there for 25 minutes and after that you remove it and you're available, then people will start to respect that when you're within your molds working on an activity, it's best not to distract you. So, what I would say to you, Nada, is, we are in charge of our own destiny here. If we strongly wanted to focus and get more done, then turning off the interruptions for short durations of time to allow our brain to focus on one thing is within our choice. The technology allows it, but the technology deceives you and doesn't show you that paradigm right out of the box. You have to take the extra step to do not disturb here and do not disturb here. But if you do it, you will very quickly see the effectiveness that it brings to you. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, nice, thank you.
I have just added it to the chat, so if anybody didn't hear the actual name of the technique.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasser.
Welcome.
Any other question?
Yeah. Hi, Tarun. I want to thank you and Muhammad for your great effort.
No.
I really appreciate your hard work. So my question is about how to recharge my energy. When I feel like I just want to relax and sit down and be away from the work. How to recharge my energy?
That's a great question, Mohammed. And I had a very simple, I had a very similar experience myself. When COVID happened, we were all locked into our houses and going out wasn't usually acceptable anymore and it was frowned upon. So you were sitting at home. What do you do? Let's watch a bit of television. Okay, well, I'm just watching television. Let me check some emails. Well, I've got the emails open. Let me just read this article and then let me just try this new technology. Let me write some code. And before you know it, in this digital sphere, you are so engraved looking at the screen that your brain is telling you and giving you all the signs to disconnect, but it's just clearly impossible to draw that disconnection. So I have seen that experience and I completely understand the emotion of where your question's coming from. Now you need to ask yourself, what is the hobby and what is the one thing that energizes you? Now for me, the thing that energizes me the most is listening to music, going for a walk, going for a run, doing a bit of HIIT cardio workout. Back in the day when things were normal, I would go for a hike. I would go for photography and those were the hobbies that I enjoyed the most. Now you need to discover the one hobby that you enjoy the most. It could be reading a book, right? It could be music. It could be working out. It could actually be writing code. For all you know, you just need to discover that one hobby. Now, when you've discovered that hobby, you need to manage your time effectively in a way where you give yourself 30 to 45 minutes of a slot during the day where you can exercise that hobby. Now, for me, it's slightly simple because listening to music, I sort of take a 30-minute break after lunch, and that's my time where I will basically do not entertain any distractions and just turn on the music on a loud volume, sit down in my couch and just listen to the music. And as I do that and I close my eyes, a lot of the thoughts will keep parsing themselves in the background, but they are parsing. I'm not thinking about them. But after half an hour, when I get up from my couch, I feel so fresh and energized, ready to take on whatever the world throws at me. The other thing that I've done is I've basically detached my phone into two separate devices. I have a work phone and I have a personal phone. I do not install any work or work-related applications on my personal phone, and I do not install any personal applications on my work phone. So when I am during the day working, I keep my work phone with me, except the breaks that I take. And at that point, I will happily look at the phone and respond to emails and check messages as per the routine I have. But once I've finished my day, and I do not want to work, I put that phone in a wardrobe and I do not look at it till the next day. And what I find with that is I am more effective because I'm not slave to, hey, I have a free minute, let me just quickly check how the work email is doing or whether there are any new messages on Teams or Zoom. because I don't have the app anymore, I'm not obliged to look at it. And on my personal phone, I will only have the apps that are relevant to me that I want to look at in my own time. So drawing that distinction where you can separate your work from your personal life, and whether it's by having two separate devices, is a good technique. Being able to find yourself a hobby that energizes you and makes you passionate and worthy and feel happy is the one thing you should do and exercise every day. Once you start to apply that hobby and use it every day, you're going to find that there's subtle happiness, and that you will find that you will start to clear your schedule and prevent your time to be able to use and enjoy that hobby. But if you make it very optional to say, hey, if I have time on the weekend, I'll go for a run or I'll go for a walk, the chances are, over the weekend, some other priority will take precedence, and you wouldn't even be able to do that hobby over the weekend. So, being able to decide and action it every day using the routine and the discipline is what will give you happiness. And the last and the most important thing I would say here is stress management. Sometimes we are doing one thing, but we're thinking about another thing, and then we suddenly start to think about another thing. We haven't completed the first thing, and there's so much going on in our mind that we start to get stressed. And with stress, you will find you can't really be effective. You will find you're thinking too much. You're not being able to action. You're not effectively able to communicate. You're in a bit of an itchy mode. You're always ready to just blast like a bomb because you're kind of so filled in and full of emotion, draining yourself with all this emotion that you're dealing with, stressing over something or the other. So being able to liberate yourself, being able to not think too much about one thing, being able to switch yourself off by doing the hobby, listening to the music, being able to separate your personal and work life are effective ways of managing that stress and feeling happy. And, I find that ever since I've taken this mode of working over the past 4 or 5 months, I've been a lot more effective and efficient in my work and personal life. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
There's just one more topic I want to cover, and then I can open the forum for further questions. I know, Mohammed, you had a list of a few questions as well,
Yeah.
so we'll happily move on to that right after that topic.
Yeah, sure.
So the one thing that I want to a little bit talk about is time intervals. And, sometimes when we're at work, more so in today's time where, everything is a virtual meeting, you will find that your calendar starts to be double booked or triple booked because everyone needs to meet with you virtually, right? And they just can't abruptly call you all the time. So they'll put a meeting invite in your work calendar or in your personal calendar, and then you end up with many calendars because you've got your personal ID, you've got a work ID, you might have a client ID, and they all don't sync together. And people send separate calendar requests on separate email IDs, and that's why you get this mixture of having to be on multiple calls at the same time. Now, sometimes effectively managing your calendar is one way of being in charge of your own time. And I tend to do that at least a week or 2 weeks in advance. So I will look at my calendar this week for next week and say, these are the key things I need to get done. So let me block these 45 minutes in my calendar for preparation of this session or this presentation I need to work on. And then in addition to that, I know that, for example, at 4 p.m. or 4:30 p.m., I need to go and pick my son up from the nursery. So I'm going to be away from my desk for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Let me block that slot in my calendar so that no one books that time. Therefore, I don't need to negotiate that time with them. And therefore, I'm not going to be stressed, right? Like someone's booked it. I have to go and pick my son up. What's going to happen, right? So proactively managing your calendar and your time schedule by looking 1 week ahead, by blocking time slots that will give you, the breathing time to be able to prepare or plan for the activities you need to perform is good. What I also find is a lot of people find it effective to have 20 minutes blocked in their calendar first thing in the morning, where if you start your day at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, you've got a 20-minute fixed block, 20 of minutes, where you basically just review the key things you need to get done during the day. It may be working on a proposal. It may be shipping a product. It may be deploying software. It may be doing training, right? It may be anything. But those 20 minutes are your daily scrum for yourself to plan your day, plan your routine, and revise and confirm what are the key things you want to get done, right? Now, once you've done that plan, you have a priority list effectively, a to-do list if you prefer, that you can work through in a prioritized order to get things done during the day. So calendar management is a key thing, especially if you're working remotely, if you're working from home, if you're working across multiple calendars, because what that empowers you to do is to manage your time for yourself. Because if you don't do calendar planning, you will find that your calendar will drive you. You will wake up at 9 o'clock, you will wake up at 6 o'clock, be ready for starting the office at 8 o'clock, and then 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11, 12, you'll be in back-to-back calls, and the day will be done, and you'd be like, oh my God, all these actions I took during the calls, when am I actually going to implement them? When am I going to get through and action these? And therefore you spend your time late in the evening working through all the actions, responding to those emails that you could have done had you managed to plan your day by putting the blocks in the middle to ensure that you had the headroom to go and do that activity rather than working late into the evening and giving up your personal time. So calendar management is an effective technique for time management. If you haven't yet tried it, I would encourage you to do it. What I will caveat that by is don't overplan. So don't start to block the full 8 hours in your calendar every day, because you will find that when you start to overdo something, people step over the line very quickly because they would think, oh, this guy's always booked, right? And I can't find a slot in their calendar, so I'm just going to start double booking their calendar. But if you leave some spots for other people to book, then you will see that they will start to respect that you have some arrangements already in your calendar. Therefore, striking a right balance is important, and it's worth a try, if nothing more. So before I open up the forum to Mohammed for questions, I have been talking for about 40 minutes. I just wanted to say that, these are techniques that work for me. And I am different than you, and you are different than me, right? So if you find that certain techniques don't work for you, then it's okay. We are all unique, and we all have our different ways of working. It's important to try, but it's important to inspect and adapt. And if you find a certain technique doesn't work for you, adapt it to your lifestyle, adapt it to your personality, and it may then become relevant, right? So don't stop doing something because it's hard and it hasn't worked, but ensure that you reattempt at it with a different lens, because the chances are you may be able to adapt it and make it work for yourself to get the same effectiveness. And sometimes it feels really hard to do in the beginning, managing your calendar, remembering the night before to look at your calendar for the next day, eating that frog in the morning. All of this sounds difficult, and it will be hard the first few times you do it. But when you learn to adapt it and make your lifestyle, you'll start to see the benefits that this will start to deliver for you. So I'll pause here and happy to sort of open the forum and take questions from Mohammed as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay, if anyone has question, or can I go for the question I collected from people? Okay, let me start, and if anyone has question, please just interrupt me, no problem. One of the question is, how you usually learn, if you would like to learn something new, what is the best or effective way to learn something new?
That's an interesting question. So what is the best and the most effective?
And the quick as well. I mean, the best is quickest, effective, and
Okay,
yeah.
sure. So I think for me, sometimes finding the thing that inspires me is the thing that I believe I want to pursue. Things that inspire me could be, technology advancements, better ways of implementing a technology, and I find a certain pleasure in going after and learning those techniques, right? So right away, if I can spot something that makes me more productive, more effective, more intelligent, more unique, more relevant, more leading edge, then I will go after that thing, right? Now, for some people, it may be that their interests and hobbies are different, and they may find that learning a new skill set or learning a new language or learning a musical instrument inspires them more. So identify what, is your unique personality and what you enjoy doing, and align to that the things that you want to learn, right? And when you see an opportunity to learn something within that sphere, you will be self-driven and motivated to go after it, right? Now, how do you learn something quick? Obviously, if you enjoy doing something, the chances are you would want to do more of it. But at the same time, it's about drawing that line of saying what is good enough and where I can, in the first iteration, say I'm so find the right opportunities for things that inspire you, go after those skills, and draw the line of how much is good enough for now, and versus what you can come back to improvise later. That would be my answer to it.
So from my experience, I prefer not be hurry to learn something. Should be quiet and you try to practice more in this topic that you want to learn. If you practice more, so you will have a good experience in this topic, and after that you will do it quickly. But every time in our life it takes time. Don't think that you learn something in like 2 days, 3 days, and you will be experienced in it. No, take your time. This is very good for you and very good for your mind also.
Yeah,
And
that is a very good point, and I think managing the expectations for yourself is the key here. Where sometimes we get stressed thinking, I should have learned this by now already. My peer, who is similar to me, managed to learn this technology so quickly, but why am I taking so long? Am I not smart enough? Or every person's unique, right? So don't measure yourself with others. Compare yourself with yourself. And if you do that, then you'll start to see that you're more effective because you're seeing the improvement in yourself and the progress in yourself rather than comparing yourself with others who are different and unique than you are. So yes, I think that's a fantastic point you raised there. That everything comes with more practice and more experience, but the expectation management aspect of it is equally important.
Yes, it's all about, for example, how you manage on expectation. For example, when we become a manager and you have like you have expectation about your role, and then when you move to the role, there is more unexpected challenges. So how you deal with that?
That is a great question. The the hard reality of life is that we are sometimes told one thing, but life throws a whole different curveball at us.
Yeah.
The classic example is sometimes we join a new project and we're told that that project is going to be a rose garden, and we arrive at the project and it's a graveyard, and you're like, what have I gotten myself into, right? Like, how did I arrive here? I was sold a dream and this is a nightmare. What has happened here? It's day and light and it's a contrast. And there are two things that can happen. One is you step away from it and you take a bold step to say no and you walk out. Or the other option is to, put yourself on the line to see what you can make of that opportunity. Now, I have tried both the approaches. Sometimes the first approach is better. Sometimes the second approach is better. But don't firmly make up your mind to say no to every opportunity, because sometimes you don't know few footsteps into that opportunity. It may still be a rose garden behind that graveyard. It may still be a day behind that night, right? But unless you take those few steps, you don't know what's going to transpire. So explore the opportunity. And sometimes you will find that when you work in that project, you are able to mold the project to your strengths, to carve out the role that is relevant to your skills or to the areas that you want to grow in. But if you do find that, within the few days and weeks or months of being on that project or that opportunity, that you are wasting your time, it's not going to add up to the longer term goals you have, and that it doesn't in any way uplift your situation in the long term and help you build towards the outcome that you're interested in, then it's better to take the step back and bail yourself out of the opportunity. So dealing with unknowns sometimes could be a blessing in disguise, but it's an untreaded territory, right? So sometimes we have to take a few pathways and steps down that unknown to figure out whether there is any silver lining behind that cloud. And if there isn't, then sometimes it's better to bail yourself out. I get unexpected situations all the time in this role, where I'm dealing with clients and I'm dealing with people. People and clients are probably the most unexpected, and human nature is unexpected, right? You can speak to one person if they're not feeling well, they may just not behave professionally the way you would expect them to. You may talk to a client and they might have a bad day, and you may not get the treatment that you thought you would, right? So the more you are versed to these situations, the more you would find that you become versatile and dynamic. And some of this experience you will only learn when you go through those situations and take the judgment call by taking the few steps. So my bold message here to you would be, don't just get into that situation and say no and turn around. Sometimes playing and letting the situation play out can be the best to your advantage that there could be.
Thank you. Okay, I think this is the question. Any other question?
Is not a question, but is considers adding something. If you're going to be B2B manager, I think you have to learn how to listen to your employees because they can give you great ideas and you don't think about it. And also, when you are a manager, the most important thing you have to prioritize your tasks. This is most important thing when you are manager. You should be very quiet. You should be have a good how to prioritize your tasks. This is very important. And also, you should listen for your team, not order them. You have to lead them. Manager role is to lead the people, not only to manage and say order, do and do. No. Maybe you say it in wrong way.
So
This is my point.
I will cite this with an example. There's a subtle difference between being a leader and being a manager. Is a manager can help you climb the ladder faster, right? As managers, we can be very effective in telling people how something can be done, right? And we can coach them and help them get better at climbing that ladder or that activity that they're supposed to perform. Leadership, on the other side, is being bold enough to decide which wall the ladder is safest and best placed at. Because no matter how good a manager you are, if the ladder is on the wrong side of the cliff, then no matter how fast the people you're managing walk up that ladder, they're only going to fall down that hill. So my message to you here on the call is that don't be a manager, be a leader, and you can only be a leader once you are versatile, having worked through the unique situations that the life throws at you. And as you work through those unique situations, learn from those opportunities, you will find that you're able to take the better calls for yourself and your team members, to coach them and mentor them to learn from your skills and your experiences, to decide then which ladder needs to be placed against what wall. And the key thing here is to lead by setting an example, right? I cannot, for example, ask you to go and take a certification if I haven't treaded the steps myself to take the certification first. So leading by example here very much is putting myself on the line, putting yourself on the line to doing something, taking that experience, learning from it, and then mentoring others and showing them the path forward. So, very much acknowledge what you're saying, and I hope the skills that you've learned of effective time management are things you can take away and start to practice yourself. And as you get better at them, you can start to coach and mentor and become a leader and start to dissipate that knowledge to people that you work with as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Any other questions or participation or comments? It's welcome.
I was asking about the time management. Does it apply to the managerial levels, not the people working under the managers, the technical guys?
That's a good question. So sometimes you can only really appreciate the value of time management when you look back But the thing is, when you look back, the time is gone and you're like, it's gone, right? I can't change it. Now, I have come from a software development background myself. I spent a good decade working as a programmer, very deep in the trenches for managers of managers, sitting next to the computer 8 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, coding my heart out. I did Python, I did C Sharp. I've done lots of programming languages and lots of big projects for customers. So for me, I've been quite well versed with that mindset of, being a technical person. And when I look back, I think I could have achieved so much more had I better managed my time, because if I could sometimes plan my day better, I would have been able to get more done. I would have been able to learn more. I would have been able to get more certifications done. I would have been able to collaborate more with the community and have an even better network. Who knows, even a more popular Azure DevOps TV YouTube channel had I started it 10 years back, right? But I never took the time out from my busy work schedule back then to, take my neck out and look outside the world to see what's happening in there, because I was so busy doing the one thing that I enjoyed. So as I have now looked back, I appreciate that there is or was an opportunity to have better managed my time. Not that I can go back and change it, but now I still have an opportunity in my current role to more effectively manage my time. And I'm pleased to say that I feel that I'm doing a good job at managing my time better. Again, Mustafa, I would say, for people, everyone is unique. So, I have that experience and some people may differ. So adapt it, and if you feel that you could do a different thing in a different way, then please do it. But that's just my experience and I'm happy to share it with you here.
Thank you. I usually say, for hypothesis-driven development, I usually say hypothesis-driven living, like just run the experiment and see where it will lead you or what you expect because you will learn something even you don't know what it is. Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, Abdurrahman.
Hello, Abdurrahman. Yeah, I was asking about the delegation. How can I trust people that I'm doing delegation on? What if I can't trust the people that I will delegate the task on them? What if they can't trust me when they delegate the job?
And that's such a beautiful question. Thank you for asking that question. I mean, it's a dilemma, right? It's a chicken and egg problem. It's a chicken and egg problem where sometimes you need to trust someone before you can delegate a task to them, but you cannot trust them without delegating to test them first. And that's why sometimes we refrain from delegating something to someone because we don't know whether they'll be able to do justice to it. And it's no different than some of our own practical lives where, when we make friends, we go out and meet people. Now, we don't go and, give them money or take them out for a big dinner or tell them all of our private life stories on the first day, right? We sort of meet them the first day, we talk, we feel comfortable, and then over time that friendship matures to an extent where we can freely talk with them. And delegation and the trust part of delegation is no different, where you would start to create the social sphere around you of like-minded people or a team. And then as you start to take bits of delegation to them and they start to earn your trust, you build this bridge where it's more open and free to send work one way and receive work from the other, because together you will not let each other down. But it does take time and it does take a lot of effort to build that trust. But once you succeed by building that trust with one individual, you will see and find that you are more confident in delegating more work to others. And if you're looking at it the other way around, where you're thinking, how can I get my supervisors or managers or bosses to trust me to do that work? Sometimes you have to take the first step and ask them for that opportunity and assure them that you will try your best. You may not succeed, you may fail, but you will learn from that failure and make sure that you improvise on it next time. So it's a two-way bridge and it's a two-way handshake where both the parties need to give a hand to shake it. And sometimes if the other person is not offering the hand, you need to put your hand out first to give them that assurance that you're ready to sort of take the first steps in that journey.
Thank you, sir.
Fantastic. So, Mohammed, I'm conscious we're at time.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take one last question if you have one.
Sure. So anyone would like to ask the last question? Mm, I think that's fine. So thank you, Tarun. It was really very great to have you here, and really appreciate that. It was really fantastic to share that experience with all the community. I hope people that doesn't make it to. I will send the video for all people, so I'm happy that they will must. Okay, that's great. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time, and I hope you found the session useful. I am on Twitter as well under Aurora_T, and I'm on YouTube as well under Azure DevOps TV. Please keep in touch if there's any feedback or further question. I am more than happy to get back to you. Thank you, Mohammed, for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for attending the session.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.